Alright, last year after watching Total Drama Island and hearing the contestants talk about the jury voting on the winner, that interested me because I'm a big Survivor fan, so it was disappointing that it didn't pan out and they didn't necessarily have a jury vote, so I decided to make my own and it was good fun. Now I'm going to go through every season and act as if they had a jury vote because there could be some interesting results and it's just a fun experiment overall. So yeah, it's time to get in here. Starting off with Total Drama Island. This decision can be very easy and very difficult at the same time. For the easy way, in the finale, Owen talked about wanting to use the money to throw a party for everyone, and the majority of the cast ended up on his side rooting for him, so that's the easy way. But that included every contestant when Chris said that the jury phase started in episode 14, the Brunch of Disgustingness episode at the final 10. So I'm just going to talk about the 8 non-finalists and where their vote could go. Bridget is definitely voting for Gwen. She had a really nice friendship with Gwen in Total Drama Island, and even when they argued about the love letter, they reconciled. Meanwhile, she never really had a big connection with Owen. For DJ, he'll vote for Owen since they were both in that guys alliance with Duncan and Jeff, which is the only thing that I'm really going off of since he didn't really have the most interactions with the two. Like, yeah, DJ threw Owen off a cliff in the Paintball Deer Hunter episode, but that was all game and that was before the guys alliance, so he'll vote for Owen. Now for Duncan. This is the biggest swing vote up for grabs vote in this jury because he was tight with Owen and Gwen, having the guys alliance with Owen and bonding with Gwen in the Hook, Line, and Screamer episode. I don't want to look at future seasons because this is only for Total Drama Island, but even in the future seasons, he prioritized Gwen, but he still had a good relationship with Owen. This is a tough call, but I'll say that he votes for Gwen because in Island, in the Are We There Yeti episode, Owen sold the challenge and got him eliminated, so that's got to be fresh on his mind. Now for Jeff. This is a toss-up because he had the guys alliance with Owen, which I used for why DJ votes for Owen, but he also had the Trial by Tri-Arm Triathlon episode with Gwen where they became friends for like one episode. It never really carried over. Big missed opportunity for sure. But I'll say that Jeff votes for Gwen. Their friendship in that episode was stronger than anything that Jeff and Owen had. For Heather, this is a very easy Owen vote. She doesn't necessarily like Owen, but she just hated on Gwen for the whole season, so that's really all that needs to be said. For Lashana, she's voting for Gwen for sure. She's like her best friend, especially when in the Search and Don't Destroy episode, when she saw Gwen crying and Gwen explained the situation about Heather and Trent kissing. Lashana went around the whole island gathering up the votes to get Heather or Trent out. She's a real one for sure. For Lindsay, she's a flip-flopper. When she left the game, she said that she'll miss Owen the most, but in the After the Dock of Shame episode, she said that she wants Gwen to win. She'll just vote for Gwen, like Gwen and the girls were always close. Finally for Trent, easily a Gwen vote for sure, so Gwen wins this season 6-2. Now for Total Drama Action, they didn't really say when the jury phase was because they probably ditched that idea, so I'll just go with the merge cast. Courtney really should be a Duncan vote, but she was bitter at him because Duncan voted her out and she said that they're done, but also she came crawling back to him in the finale, so I'll just give her vote to Duncan. For Harold, he's disgusted by Beth in terms of having a relationship, but he's been getting bullied by Duncan since Total Drama Island, and he didn't even leave on good terms with Duncan, so he's gotta vote for Beth. For Justin, it's an interesting case for sure. He manipulated Beth for the early portion of Total Drama Action and turned her into somewhat of a follower, But in the Princess Pride episode, he and Duncan battled over Courtney and he got eliminated in that episode, so he can't be too happy about that. So it depends on if he votes based on gameplay or emotions, and knowing how big Justin's ego is, he's gonna vote based on emotions, so he's going with Beth. For Lashana, although she and Duncan bonded nicely in the Trial by Tri-Arm Triathlon episode in Total Drama Island, that went nowhere, and in this season she was mad at Duncan for bullying Harold, so she's voting for Beth. And for Lindsay, she's a locked in Beth vote unless she accidentally votes for Duncan. But yeah, they were best friends, plus she had a bad time with Duncan at the movie reward that they went on, and Duncan insulted her intelligence in the Get a Clue episode. So yeah, Beth wins 4-1. Now for Total Drama World Tour. I'm going with the final 2 rather than the final 3 with Cody in it. Doesn't matter anyways, he doesn't have the votes to win. Also, Blaney was technically at the merge, but I'm not really going to give her a vote, unlike Duncan that, like, at least he knows the people personally and has played more days. For Cody, he votes for Heather for sure, especially after saying that Heather is the good guy in the finale. For Courtney, she votes for Alejandro for sure, like he had her wrapped around his fingers and she was rooting for Alejandro in the finale, so yeah. For Duncan, he and Al work together sometimes, but were also working against each other until Alejandro ultimately betrayed him in the African Lying Safari episode and contributed to his elimination. But he didn't love Heather either, especially when they got in a fight because Duncan didn't want to be hugged by her. He's probably just going to be bitter that Alejandro betrayed him and they had more of a relationship, so he's gonna vote for Heather. For Owen, he liked Alejandro for most of the season up until his elimination episode where he realized Alejandro's true nature. While he didn't have much of a connection with Heather in this season, but it wasn't a negative connection unlike with Alejandro, so he'll vote for Heather. And for Sierra, she votes for Heather easily. She was one of the only girls that didn't fall for Alejandro's games, and she didn't appreciate Alejandro trying to split up her and Cody. Also, by the end of it all, she and Heather put their differences aside to vote out Alejandro, which would have happened if Sierra didn't destroy the plane. Heather wins this one 4-1, but this exercise totally gives backing to what I've been saying about Heather in this season. She didn't become a better character or get redemption. The only thing that happened was that Alejandro was worse, and that's what most of these votes and her support at the end is based on. It wasn't anything that she did actively to improve as a character, because she was still mean in this season. It's just that Alejandro was worse. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Now for Total Drama Revenge of the Island. For Jo, when she was leaving the game, she gained respect for Cameron and said that Lightning is an idiot because he couldn't figure out that she was a girl, and they butted heads all season. But in the finale, she was rooting for Lightning. As much as he annoys Jo, at the end of the day, they're jocks and they're very competitive, so game recognizes game and she'll vote for Lightning. For Mike, he's voting for Cameron, and this doesn't really need that much of an explanation. They're best friends while he barely had a relationship with Lightning, and I'll just say the same for Zoe as well. So it comes down to Scott, and it's tough because although he and Lightning had a tumultuous relationship, in the end game, Scott was trying to convince Zoe to vote Lightning out because he was the best player left, so there is some respect for his game. And for Cameron, they didn't really like each other. Scott had no respect for him. It's tough, but I lean towards Scott voting for Lightning since he just doesn't seem to like or have much respect for that golden trio. That brings this to a tie, so I'm going to bring back the last pre-merger to be the deciding vote. Technically, it's Dakota Zoid. On one hand, Lightning saved her from drowning, but they didn't really have much of a connection. Same with Cameron, but she was rooting for Cameron in the finale. It could go either way, but the show is making it out to be that Cameron is more likable than Lightning, so I'll just give her vote to Cameron and he wins 3-2. But if this included the whole cast, then Cameron destroys Lightning. Now for Total Drama All-Stars, I'll be evaluating Mike as Mal since that's what everyone in the game got to experience on this season. For Alejandro, even though Zoe ignored everything that he was saying, at the end of the day, he hates Mal, so he's voting for Zoe. For Cameron, this is the toughest one here because that's both of his friends, but he'll probably remember how he got treated by Mal and that Zoe always stuck by his side in this season, so he's going to vote for Zoe. For Courtney, she's probably going to vote for Zoe because she's the only one that thought of targeting Zoe all season, so I assume that there's some respect for her game there. Also, Mal exposed her chart and ruined all of her friendships and relationships in the round where she was eliminated, so she's gonna vote for Zoe. For Duncan, I'll let him send his vote in from jail, but yeah, his vote is gonna be up in the air. On one hand, Zoe and Duncan weren't necessarily best friends. Like, Duncan didn't like it when Zoe called him out for being so good when he thinks that he's such a bad boy. But they were able to talk about Mal some, and that topic seemed to be somewhat of a connector, a common interest. While on the other hand, Duncan knew of Mal from Juvie, and when he got arrested, he talked about how he's going to rule Juvie, so Duncan really likes that lifestyle and he might respect Mal. Plus, Mal didn't really contribute to his elimination. Also, he made that guys alliance in Total Drama Island. Like, Duncan seems like he's a real bro, so I'll just give his vote to Mal, even though he and Zoe had more of a relationship. For Gwen, Zoe helped calm her down in the Zeke and Ye Shall Find episode, and Gwen said that she's really good, and they joked around some in this season. While Mal sabotaged Gwen in the penultimate episode, so she's gonna vote for Zoe, especially since there's a relationship there and she and Mike didn't really have much of a relationship. And for the final vote, Scott is going to vote for Zoe because Mal got him injured in the penultimate episode and he left warning Zoe about how dangerous Mal is. Plus, Scott and Zoe seem to get over their beef from Revenge of the Island, almost acting like it never happened. The only questionable aspect is that Scott could be bitter at Zoe for always outlasting him and voting him out when Mike was clearly Mal, and even when she eliminated him, she said that she knew exactly what she was dealing with and still decided to eliminate Scott anyways. But he should vote for Zoe, so she wins this season 5-1. Now for Pocket 2 Island. Dave is tough because before that finale, that final challenge, he's voting for Sky no matter what, especially since he doesn't know that she didn't want him to be her helper in the final challenge, and Dave doesn't know about the boyfriend situation. So it's really just a matter of if he gets access to this information, and I'm gonna say no, just let it be a fair vote with no outside information. So Dave votes for Sky. Unlike for Dave, for Jasmine, it's not difficult to predict where she'll vote. She votes for Sean easily, before and after the secrets get revealed, so no caveat as well like there was with the Dave situation. For Max, it's a tough call because the guy didn't really interact with anyone outside of Scarlett. I'd say that he would go with the most evil option, but also he showed himself to be really caring, so I'll just give his vote to Sky because she gave him some gum in the first episode. For Scarlett, it's actually questionable if she'd be allowed back to vote, but I'll let her have a vote. But it's the same issue where she only really interacted with Max. She's probably going to be the most bitter at the person that contributed to her downfall the most, but they both contributed equally. So I'll just give her vote to Sky because Scarlett is a genius and she would probably respect that Sky is smarter than Sean. And for Sugar, she hates Sky. Like, they tried to work together, but it just didn't work out, especially in the Skyfall episode. So she votes for Sean. But in the end, Sky is going to win this one 3-2. Now for Total Drama Island Revival Season 1. This is going to be a final 2 and the next season is going to be a final 3. Plus, Millie being in this final 3 doesn't matter. She doesn't have the votes to win. Alright, so for Chase's vote, it's tough because he only talks about Emma, but I'll just give his vote to Bowie because they work together in an alliance. That's the only thing to go off of. Emma votes for Priya, especially after how she and Bowie fell out over the Chase drama. Julia votes for Priya because Bowie backstabbed her, and in this season, she doesn't have a rivalry with Priya. Millie votes for Priya. They're best friends, and in this timeline, they still get to reconcile in the challenge before the final 2. Plus, Millie wasn't mad at Priya, rather Priya was mad at Millie, so in the end, she still votes for Priya. Ripper votes for Bowie because Priya is a nerd and Ripper is a real bro, especially in this season. And for Z, his vote is up in the air because he has no reason to vote for any of them. They both betrayed him, but I'll just give his vote to Priya because they were on the same team and spent more time together, so Priya wins this season 4-2. Now for the most recent season up to this point, Total Drama Island Revival Season 2. I didn't go with the final 3 for World Tour and Revival Season 1 when that could have been an option, but here it's unavoidable, so this is going to be between Caleb, Julia, and Wayne. Also, this is a bigger jury because they had to merge so early. For Axel, she didn't really have a strong vote because she was loving on Ripper all the time, but in the finale, she and Ripper were rooting for Wayne, so I'll just give him both of their votes. Bowie votes for Wayne because of Raj, and while I'm talking about Raj will vote for Wayne as well. Those two are very locked in. Damien supported Caleb in the finale, but just about everyone that supported Caleb just didn't want Julia to win. Damien probably wouldn't vote for Caleb, especially since he really cared about Priya getting her feelings hurt, and he's just not voting for Julia, so I'll give his vote to Wayne. MK votes for Julia for sure, and it was nice for their friendship that MK went against the whole cast for Julia. Priya votes for Caleb easily since they made up before the finale. Then Z, he doesn't really have a high opinion of Caleb because he tried to manipulate Priya, and he doesn't seem to hate Julia, but he didn't want to see her win in the end, so he's just gonna vote for Wayne. Wayne wins this season 6-1-1, but I don't want to leave Caleb and Julia tied, so I'm going to bring back Nichelle to cast a deciding vote, and just to make it simple, she can't vote for Wayne. So it's between Caleb and Julia, and she definitely picks Caleb, especially after how Julia got her eliminated. So Wayne gets first place, Caleb gets second place, and Julia gets third place. And that's if every Total Drama season was decided by a jury vote. Some of the votes were random because Total Drama isn't really that deep. It's not a real social strategy game, but it was still interesting to perform this exercise because it revealed a good amount about how some of the characters and relationships were written. So this was useful in some way for sure. But yeah, that's all for now.